far would you go to protect your child? At what point do you stop ignoring their cries and take a closer look at the pain they claim to endure daily? What if, in your silence, the child suffers unimaginable emotional and physical wounds from someone they are supposed to trust? These are questions that test loyalty, maternal instincts, and even the bonds of blood. But let me ask you, dear viewer, if you discover that your child's suffering was being caused by someone who should nurture their growth and brilliance, would you intervene or let things be? Amaka came back from school crying, feeling sad after being punished by her teacher. Her school uniform was dusty and the mark of her teacher's cane was visible on her arms. She wiped her tears hurriedly as she approached the front door of their small but neatly kept home. "Mommy, Mommy," Amaka called out as she stepped into the living room, her voice shaking. Her mother, Ifoma, was sitting on the couch, engrossed in an old novel. She glanced up briefly, a mix of curiosity and irritation on her face. "What is it, Amaka?" Ifoma asked, marking her place in the book. She had grown used to Amaka coming home with complaints but always dismissed them as the drama of a stubborn child. Amaka dropped her school bag and knelt beside her mother, her face red and swollen from crying. "Mommy, Mr. Ajayi beat me again today. She beat me in front of the whole class and made me kneel outside for hours because I answered a question her daughter Grace couldn't answer." Ifoma frowned, but didn't seem overly concerned. "Amaka, how many times will I tell you to stop being stubborn in school? Why must you always be the one to complain? If your teacher punished you, then maybe you did something wrong." Amaka's voice broke as she pleaded. "Mommy, I didn't do anything wrong. She doesn't like me because I'm always top of the class and Grace isn't. She calls me names and the other students laugh at me. It's not fair, Mommy. Please, you have to do something." Ifoma shook her head, her expression hardening. "Amaka, life isn't fair. You can't expect everyone to like you. Focus on your studies and stop provoking your teacher. I don't want to hear any more complaints about this." Amaka's heart sank. She had hoped her mother would listen, but once again, she felt dismissed and alone. She stood up slowly. Her shoulders slumped. "Okay, Mommy," she said quietly, turning to leave. In her room, Amaka sat on her bed, staring at the fading evening light filtering through the window. She clutched her math book, but her mind was far from her studies. The laughter of her classmates echoed in her ears, and the sting of the cane burned on her skin. "Why doesn't anyone believe me?" she whispered to herself. Unbeknownst to her, Ifoma was pacing in the living room. She wasn't as indifferent as she appeared. Something about Amaka's plea lingered in her mind, but she pushed it aside. Ifoma had secrets of her own, secrets she couldn't afford to reveal. The next morning, Amaka hesitated before entering the classroom. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, her eyes darting towards Miss Ajayi, who was already glaring at her from behind her desk. Grace, the teacher's daughter, sat smugly in the front row, a stark contrast to Amaka's uneasy demeanor. "Amaka," Miss Ajayi's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Why are you late?" "I'm not late, ma," Amaka muttered. "Do you think I'm blind? Go and kneel at the back of the class." The class erupted into murmurs as Amaka made her way to the back, her cheeks burning with shame. She knelt on the cold floor, her hands trembling as she tried to fight back tears. This had become a reality. Day after day, Miss Ajayi found ways to humiliate and punish her often without reasoning. The other students didn't dare speak up, fearing they might become the next target of the teacher's words. After school, Amaka lingered behind, hoping to avoid Miss Ajayi, but her plan failed. Amaka, Miss Ajayi called, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Come here. Amaka approached cautiously, her heart pounding. Yes, ma. Do you think you are better than everyone else because you are brilliant? Miss Ajayi sneered. Let me tell you something, young lady. In this world, no one likes a show-off. Stop trying to outshine my daughter, or I will make your life even more miserable. Amaka swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. I'm not trying to outshine anyone, ma. I just want to learn. Miss Ajayi's slap came out of nowhere, leaving Amaka stunned and silent. Get out of my sight. Later that evening, Amaka tried once more to talk to her mother. She showed her the red marks on her arms, but Ifoma's reaction was same. I'm tired. Amaka, I have work tomorrow. Go to bed. Amaka's eyes filled with tears. She felt a storm brewing inside her, a mix of anger, frustration, and hopelessness. She didn't know how much more she could take. The next day began with the same dread Amaka had felt for weeks. As she dressed for school, her reflection in the mirror showed her swollen eyes from the previous night's tears. She adjusted her uniform and brushed her hair slowly. Her movements lethargic. Amaka, you'll be late. Ifoma's voice called from the kitchen. I'm coming, mommy, she replied, her voice barely audible. The walk to school was a lonely one. The morning was bright, and the streets bustled with activity. But Amaka felt like the only person in the world. Her mind replayed Miss Ajayi's threats and the laughter of her classmates. Upon reaching the school gate, she hesitated. Her feet felt glued to the ground, but the sound of the bell forced her forward. She walked into the classroom and sat at her usual desk at the back, trying to make herself invisible. As the morning lessons began, Miss Ajayi entered the class, her presence commanding silence. Good morning, class, she said, her tone sharp. Good morning, ma, the students chorused. Before we begin today's lesson, let me remind you all that respect and obedience are essential in this classroom. Some of you seem to think you can do as you please, but not under my watch. Her eyes rested on Amaka as she spoke. Her words a thinly veiled jab. Amaka kept her head down, hoping not to attract attention. Now, let's begin with some questions. Grace, Miss Ajayi's voice softened as she addressed her daughter. Can you solve this equation on the board? Grace stood up confidently and walked to the front. She picked up the chalk and began to write, but it quickly became clear that she was struggling. Take your time, dear, Miss Ajayi said, her voice encouraging. The class watched in silence as Grace erased her work and started again. But her answer was still incorrect. Does anyone else know the answer? Miss Ajayi asked, scanning the room. Her eyes stopped on Amaka. You there, Miss Genius. Why don't you show us how it's done? Amaka hesitated, knowing this was a trap. But the class's eyes were on her, and she couldn't refuse. She stood up slowly and walked to the board. Her hands trembled as she picked up the chalk, but she took a deep breath and focused on the equation. Within moments, she had solved it perfectly. The class erupted in applause, but Miss Ajayi's face darkened. Sit down, she snapped, her tone icy. Amaka turned to her seat, her heart pounding. She knew she had just earned herself more trouble. During the break, Amaka stayed in the classroom, too afraid to venture out where the other students might taunt her. She opened her lunchbox but found she had no appetite. Her thoughts were interrupted by Grace and two other girls walking in. They surrounded her decks, their expressions smug. Do you think you are so smart? Grace sneered. My mother doesn't like you, and neither do I. I don't want any trouble, Amaka said quietly. Well, you've got it, one of the other girls said, tipping over Amaka's lunch. The food spilled onto the floor and the girls laughed. Amaka clenched her fist, tears threatening to spill, but she refused to cry in front of them. By the end of the school day, Amaka was emotionally drained. She walked home slowly, dragging her feet. When she reached the house, she found her mother preparing dinner in the kitchen. How was school today? Ifeoma asked without looking up. It was fine, Amaka lied, her voice flat. Amaka clenched her fist, tears threatening to spill, but she refused to cry in front of them. By the end of the school day, Amaka was emotionally drained. She walked home slowly, dragging her feet. When she reached the house, she found her mother preparing dinner in the kitchen. How was school today? Ifeoma asked without looking up. It was fine, Amaka lied, her voice flat. Ifeoma glanced at her daughter and noticed the tired look on her face. For a moment, she considered pressing her for details, but decided against it. Go and wash your hands. Dinner will be ready soon, she said. Amaka nodded and went to her room. She sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The weight of her teacher's hatred and mother's indifference felt unbearable. But that night, Informa couldn't sleep. Amaka's silence had unsettled her, and she found herself pacing in the living room. She thought about the stories Amaka had told her about Miss Ajayi and wondered if there was more to them than she had realized. Informer's instincts, honed by years of living with secrets, told her that something was wrong. She decided that she would pay a visit to the school the next day to see for herself what was going on. But little did she know the events of the following day would reveal far more than she could have anticipated. The next morning, Ifeoma woke up earlier than usual. Her mind made up. She was going to the school to see Miss Ajayi. For too long, she had brushed aside Amaka's complaint. Ignoring guilt had kept her awake. As Amaka dressed for school, she noticed her mother was unusually quiet. Ifeoma didn't ask her the usual questions or scold her for dragging her feet. Instead, she sat at the dining table, her eyes distant, lost in thought. Mommy, are you okay? Amaka asked insistently. Ifeoma snapped out of her reverie and forced a smile. I'm fine, my dear. Hurry up and eat your breakfast. I'll be coming to your school today. Amaka froze, a spoon halfway to her mouth. You're coming to my school? Yes, Ifeoma replied firmly. It's time I had a word with your teacher. A flicker of hope lit up in Amaka's eyes, but she quickly hid it. She didn't want to get her hopes up only to be disappointed again. At the school gate, Ifeoma walked with purpose, her steps confident. She had changed into a crisp blouse and skirt, a demeanor as commanding as her presence. Amaka trailed behind her, a mix of nervousness and anticipation swelling in her chest. When they reached the classroom, Amaka hesitated. Mommy, maybe you shouldn't. Amaka, go to your seat, Ifeoma said, cutting her off. I'll handle this. The class fell silent as Ifeoma entered. She scanned the room, her sharp eyes looking into Miss Ajayi, who was standing at the front of the class, explaining the lesson. Excuse me, Miss Ajayi, Ifeoma said, her tone polite but firm. Miss Ajayi looked up, surprised to see a parent walking into her classroom unannounced. Yes? Can I help you? I'm Ifeoma, Amaka's mother. I would like a word with you. Miss Ajayi raised an eyebrow, clearly annoyed. I'm in the middle of a lesson. Whatever it is, it can wait until after school hours. I'm afraid it can't, Ifeoma said, her voice steady. It's about my daughter and the way she has been treated in this classroom. The students exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. Amaka kept her head down, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Reluctantly, Miss Ajayi stepped outside with Ifeoma. Once they were alone, in the hallway, Ifeoma didn't waste any time. I've been hearing complaints from my daughter for weeks, she began, her tone sharp. She says you have been singling her out, punishing her unfairly, and humiliating her in front of her classmates. I want to know why. Mr. Ajayi crossed her arms, her expression defensive. Your daughter is a troublemaker. She disrupts the class and disrespects authority. If she's being punished, it's because she deserves it. Disrespects authority? Ifeoma repeated, her eyes narrowing. Amaka is a quiet, obedient child. She's also the top of her class, isn't she? Yes, but that doesn't give her the right to act superior to others. Miss Ajayi snapped. Superior? Or is it that she outshines your daughter Grace? Ifeoma asked pointedly. Miss Ajayi's face darkened, and for a moment she said nothing. Then she smirked. I see where your daughter gets her attitude from. Like mother, like daughter. Ifeoma took a step closer, her presence suddenly intimidating. Listen to me, Miss Ajayi. I won't stand by and let you mistreat my child because of your insecurities. If I hear one more complaint from Amaka about you, I will take this matter to the school board and beyond, if necessary. For the first time, Mr. Ajayi seemed rattled. She opened her mouth to respond, but Ifeoma turned on her heel and walked away without another word. Inside the classroom, Amaka watched as her mother returned, her heart pounding. Ifeoma walked up to her daughter and placed a hand on her shoulder. Let's go home, she said quietly. Home? Amaka asked confused. Yes, I've seen enough for one day, Ifeoma said, her tone softening. As they walked home together, Amaka felt a wave of relief and gratitude. For the first time, her mother had stood up for her. But beneath that relief, there was still a lingering fear. Mommy, do you think she will stop? Amaka asked, insistently. Ifeoma's jaws tightened. She will stop or she will regret it. That night, as Amaka slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, Ifeoma stood by the window, staring at the moonlight sky. She felt a storm brewing inside her, a primal instinct she hadn't felt in years. Her daughter's pain had awakened something deep within her, something she had tried to suppress. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: no one would hurt her daughter again. The next day at school, the tension in the air was thick. Amaka sat quietly at her desk, trying to focus, while classmates whispered and cast glances. Did you see the way her mom stormed in? One girl muttered. I heard she almost fought Miss Ajayi, another added. Amaka tried to block out the gossip, but unease lingered. When Miss Ajayi entered the classroom, silence fell. Her usual commanding presence seemed shaken, though her eyes were colder than ever. She locked eyes with Amaka and snarled. Open your textbooks to page 45. The lesson went on, but the tension didn't ease. During lunch, Amaka sat alone under a tree, picking at her food. When Grace and her two friends approached, enjoying your little victory, Grace sneered. Amaka looked up, confused. What are you talking about? My mom told me everything, Grace said, her voice laced with disdain. You think you are special because your mommy came to the rescue? You are nothing but a teacher's pet. I didn't ask for this, Amaka replied quietly, anger rising beneath her calm. Well, you better watch your back. Grace East, leaning closer. My mom doesn't forget things easily. By the time school ended, Amaka was drained, not from the classes, but from the constant emotional weight. When she got home, Ifeoma was already waiting, her worry evident. How was school today? She asked, voice calm but filled with concern. It was voice calm but filled with concern. It was okay, Amaka replied insistently. Did anything happen? Ifeoma pressed. Amaka shook her head, not wanting to worry her mother, but Ifeoma wasn't convinced. She could see the tension in her daughter's slumped shoulders. That evening, while Amaka did her homework, Ifeoma stood by the window, thoughts racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Memories she had buried long ago began to rise. The power she had once wielded, the life she had left behind. She closed her eyes, trying to calm the storm building within. But deep down, she knew if it came to it, she would do whatever it took to protect Amaka, even if it meant unleashing the part of herself she had hidden for years. The next morning, Ifeoma decided to walk Amaka to school. She didn't trust Miss Ajayi, and her instincts told her to stay close. As they approached the school gate, Amaka's steps slowed. Do you want me to talk to the principal? Ifeoma asked gently. Amaka looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Will it help? It might, Ifeoma replied, but only if you want me to. After a pause, Amaka shook her head. No, mommy, I'll be fine. Ifeoma's heart ached as she watched her daughter walk through the gates, knowing she had to let her face some battles alone. But she also knew one thing. If Miss Ajayi pushed too far, she wouldn't hesitate to act. That day, the classroom air was heavy with unspoken tension. Amaka gripped her pen tightly, trying to stay invisible. But Miss Ajayi's resentment boiled over. Yes, you, Amaka, she snapped. Come to the front of the class. Amaka rose slowly, heart pounding. You think you are better than everyone else, don't you? Miss Ajayi sneered. You think your brilliance gives you the right to disrespect authority. I didn't do anything wrong, ma. Amaka said softly. Silence, Miss Ajayi shouted, slamming her hand on the desk. Kneel down. Amaka dropped to her knees, cheeks burning with humiliation, tears threatening but unfalling. At home, Ifeoma's unease became unbearable. She couldn't sit still. Her instinct screamed something was wrong. She rushed to the school, and what she saw made her blood boil. Amaka was kneeling at the front of the class, tears streaked, while Miss Ajayi berated her. What's going on here? Ifeoma's voice thundered, silencing the room. Miss Ajayi turned, startled. This is a classroom, ma'am, she said stiffly. You have no right to barge in, and you have no right to treat my daughter this way. Informer snapped, her eyes blazing. Stand up, Amaka. Amaka scrambled to her feet and ran to her mother's side. I've had enough of your games, Miss Ajayi, Informer said, voice low and dangerous. You have been tormenting my child out of jealousy, and it ends now. Miss Ajayi scoffed. And what exactly are you going to do about it? Informer's eyes darkened, her rage rising. She had suppressed a true self for too long. Now maternal instinct took over. The air shifted. Students gasped as Informer's presence grew larger, more powerful. Her eyes gleamed with otherworldly light, and her voice echoed like thunder. You don't know who you're dealing with, she said. Mr. Ajayi stepped back, fear flickering in her eyes. What? What are you? I am a mother, Ifeoma said simply, and you will never harm my child again. As her transformation began, her skin shimmered like sunlight on water, her legs merging into a powerful tail. Students screamed and scrambled to the corner of the room. As Miss Ajayi fell to her knees, trembling, Please, she whispered, I'm sorry. Sorry won't erase the pain you have caused, Ifeoma said calmly, but I will give you a chance to change. If I ever hear of you hurting my daughter or any child again, you will regret it. With a flick of her tail, a wave of water surged through the room, drenching Miss Ajayi and washing away her smugness. When the transformation faded, Ifeoma stood in her human form, calm but resolute. She took Amaka's hand and led her out, leaving Miss Ajayi trembling on the floor. Outside, the sun was shining and the air felt lighter. Amaka looked up at her mother with awe and gratitude. Mommy, she whispered. Are you? Ifeoma smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. Yes, my dear, and I will always protect you. As they walked home, Amaka felt a peace she had never known. Life would never be the same, but for the first time, she felt truly free. Questions for my viewers. What would you have done in Ifeoma's place? Would you have revealed your true nature to protect your child? Or would you have handled things differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.